Van had watched 1,000 worlds die. He had seen planets burn and species vanish like dust in the wind. None of it had ever bothered him. He was Kaleri, and the Kaleri did not feel. They observed. They calculated. They decided which worlds would live, and which would be taken. Earth was supposed to be simple. His ship hung in the darkness above the blue planet, hidden behind a cloak of light that bent around him like water around a stone. The humans below could not see him. They could not even imagine him. To them, the stars were dreams and distant lights. They did not know that something cold and patient watched them from the black. Van had been given 60 rotations to complete his mission, 60 days to study the dominant species and write his report. The collective needed new resources. Earth had metals, water, and organic matter that could fuel their expansion for generations. The only question was whether the humans were worth keeping or worth removing. He began his observation with interest. The humans had built tall cities that touched the clouds. They had machines that flew through the sky and ships that crossed their oceans. They spoke in hundreds of different languages and worshipped hundreds of different gods. For a moment, Van thought they might be something special done. Then he looked closer. He watched them fight wars over lines drawn on maps. He saw them burn forests and poison rivers. He observed the rich ignore the poor, the strong crush the weak, and children go hungry while food rotted in warehouses. He recorded acts of cruelty that made no logical sense. Humans hurt each other for pride, for jealousy, for nothing at all. Van felt something close to disgust. The Kaleri were cold, yes, but they were efficient. They did not waste. They did not destroy without purpose. These humans were chaos given form. They tore their own world apart and called it progress. By the 30th rotation, his report was almost complete. He had gathered enough data. He had seen enough violence and greed. The conclusion was obvious. He sat in his observation chamber and typed the words that would seal their fate. Species classification: primitive. Threat level: none. Emotional instability renders them incapable of unified resistance. Recommendation: proceed with standard extraction protocol. The planet's resources can be harvested within 2 cycles. The dominant species can be removed through atmospheric modification. No significant loss to galactic development. Then read the words and felt nothing. This was his purpose. This was what he had been created to do. He was not a warrior or a leader. He was a watcher. He gathered information, and others made the decisions. Earth would become another empty rock, and he would move on to the next assignment. On the final night, Van allowed himself one last look at the planet. He focused his sensors on a small coastal village in a region the humans called Korea. It was a poor place. The buildings were old, and the boats were small. The people there woke early and worked hard just to survive. They caught fish from the cold sea and grew vegetables in rocky soil. Van did not know why he watched them. Perhaps he was simply bored. Perhaps some small part of him wanted to see something different before the end. He saw an old man teaching a young boy to tie knots. He saw a woman with tired eyes treating a sick child. He saw fishermen sharing their catch with families who had none. He saw a little girl with no parents sitting alone on the beach, looking up at the stars. Something strange moved inside Van. It was not pity. The Kaleri did not feel pity, but it was something. A small crack in the cold wall around his mind. He pushed the feeling away. It did not matter. In a few cycles, these people would be gone. The girl who looked at the stars would never know that something looked back at her. Van prepared to leave, orbit, and return to the collective. His mission was complete. His report was finished. Earth was done. Then the alarm started screaming. Solar flare erupted from the sun with a force his equipment had not predicted. It should not have happened. His technology was advanced beyond anything humans could imagine. But the universe did not care about technology. The flare hit his ship like a hammer made of fire. Systems failed. Lights died. The cloak that had hidden him for 60 rotations flickered and vanished. Ven grabbed the controls, but they did not respond. His ship began to fall. He fell through the atmosphere like a burning star. The heat shields cracked and groaned. Warning messages flashed in languages he could barely read through the smoke and sparks. He was going to die. After watching 1,000 worlds end, his own existence would end on a planet he had marked for destruction. The last thing he saw before impact was the ocean, cold and dark and endless. It rushed up to meet him like an old friend, welcoming him home. His ship hit the water near the coast of the small village he had been watching. The metal screamed as it tore apart. Ven was thrown against the walls of his chamber like a toy. Pain exploded through his body. Then there was only darkness and the sound of waves. He sank into the black water, surrounded by the wreckage of his broken ship. Above him, the stars continued to shine. Below him, the ocean floor waited. And somewhere on the shore, a fisherman named Teho noticed a strange light falling from the sky. He watched it crash into the sea. He told himself it was none of his business. He told himself to go back to bed, but something made him get dressed and walk to his boat. Something made him start the engine and head out into the cold morning waters. He did not know that he was sailing towards something that would change everything. He only knew that he could not look away. The sea was cold and angry that morning. Waves crashed against Teho's small boat as he pushed deeper into the dark water. The sun had not yet risen, and the world was painted in shades of gray and black. He should not have come out here. He knew that, but he could not shake the image of that strange light falling from the sky. He found the wreckage near the rocks. It was not like any machine Teho had ever seen. The metal was smooth and dark, curved in ways that seemed impossible. It groaned against the stones like a dying whale, steam rising from cracks in its skin. Teho brought his boat closer, his heart pounding in his chest. Part of him wanted to turn around. Part of him wanted to call the police or the military or anyone who would know what to do. This was not a job for a simple fisherman. This was something beyond his understanding. But then he heard a sound. A weak, broken sound. Like something breathing. Teho tied his boat to the wreckage and climbed onto the twisted metal. His boots slipped on the wet surface, but he kept moving. He found an opening in the side of the machine and looked. Inside, his blood turned to ice. There was a creature lying in the darkness. It was shaped like a human, but wrong in every way. Its skin was gray like old stone. Its fingers were too long. Its face had features that were almost familiar, but stretched and strange, like a reflection in broken water. Teho stopped breathing. Every story he had ever heard about monsters and demons flooded his mind. Every warning from his father about the dangers of the sea came rushing back. Then the creature opened its eyes. They were large and deep, filled with colors Teho could not name. And in those strange eyes, he saw something he recognized. Fear. Pure, desperate fear. The same fear he had seen in drowning men. The same fear he had felt when his own boat capsized years ago. This thing, whatever it was dying. And it was terrified. Teho stood there for a long moment. He could leave. He could walk away and pretend he had seen nothing. No one would ever know. The creature would die, and the sea would take its secrets. But Teho was not that kind of man. He reached down and grabbed the creature under its arms. It was heavier than he expected, and its skin was cold like metal left in winter. The creature made a weak sound, something between a groan and a word in a language Teho could not understand. "I do not know what you are," Teho said quietly, "but I cannot leave you here to die." He dragged the creature to his boat. It took all his strength. His muscles screamed and his back ached. By the time he pulled the gray figure over the side of the boat, the sun was starting to rise. Golden light spread across the water like spilled honey. Taiho looked at the creature lying on the floor of his boat. It was still breathing, but barely. Dark liquid that might have been blood leaked from wounds on its chest and head. Whatever this thing was, it would not survive long without help. He started the engine and turned toward shore. The village was small. Only 43 people lived there now. Most of the young had left for the cities long ago, chasing jobs and dreams. Only the old remained, along with a few stubborn souls like Taiho, who refused to abandon their home. He brought the boat to the small dock behind his house. His father, Juan, was already awake, standing on the porch with a cup of tea. "You are back early," Juan said. Then he saw what was in the boat. The cup fell from his hands and shattered on the ground. "Father, help me," Taiho said. Juan was 73 years old. He had been a soldier when he was young. He had seen strange things in his life, but nothing like this. Still, he did not run. He did not scream. He walked down to the dock with steady steps and helped his son carry the creature into the house. "We need Yuna," Taiho said. Yuna was the village doctor. She had studied in Seoul, but came back 5 years ago when her mother got sick. After her mother died, she stayed. The village needed her. There was no one else. Juan went to get her, while Taiho tried to stop the bleeding. He did not know if the creature's body worked like a human body. He did not know if his help was making things better or worse. He only knew that he could not do nothing. Yuna arrived 10 minutes later. She was still wearing her sleeping clothes, her hair messy and her eyes wide. When she saw the creature on Taiho's kitchen floor, she stopped in the doorway. "What is that?" she whispered. "I do not know," Taiho said. "But it is dying." Yuna was silent for a long moment. Taiho could see the fear in her face. He could see her mind racing through all the reasons to walk away. Then something changed in her eyes. The fear was still there, but something stronger pushed it aside. Determination, purpose, the same fire that made her stay in this dying village, when she could have had a better life somewhere else. "It bleeds," she said quietly. "Anything that bleeds can be saved." She knelt beside the creature and began to work. For 3 days, Yuna barely slept. She cleaned wounds she did not understand and stitched flesh that felt like nothing she had ever touched. The creature's body was different from a human's, but not completely. It had a heart. It had lungs. It had blood, even if the blood was darker than it should be. Juan kept watch at the door. If anyone came, he would turn them away. Taiho went fishing during the day to keep up appearances. But at night he sat beside the creature and talked to it, even though it could not answer. On the second night, a small figure appeared in the doorway. Sumin. She was 12 years old and had lived at the clinic since her parents died in a car accident 2 years ago. Yuna took care of her. "Is that a monster?" Sumin asked. Taiho looked at the gray figure on the floor. "I do not know what it is." Sumin walked closer. She was not afraid. Children sometimes have less fear than adults because they had not yet learned all the things they were supposed to be scared of. She sat down beside the creature and placed a cup of water near its head. "If it is sick, it should drink water," she said. "That is what Yuna always tells me." Taiho smiled despite everything. On the third morning, the creature opened its eyes. It looked around the room with confusion and something like wonder. Its gaze moved from Taiho to Yuna to Juan to the small girl sitting beside it. Folding a piece of paper into the shape of a bird dot, it tried to speak. The words were strange, but slowly, painfully, it managed to say one word in a language they could understand. "Why?" Taiho looked at this creature from the stars. This thing that should have been impossible and gave the only answer he had. Because you needed help. And we were here. The creature stared at him as if he had spoken the most confusing thing in the universe. Perhaps he had. Ven did not understand. He lay on a soft bed in a wooden house, surrounded by creatures he had been sent to judge. They brought him food. They cleaned his wounds. They sat beside him and spoke in gentle voices. Even though he could barely understand their words, it made no sense. In the Kalari collective, there was no room for weakness. The sick were left behind. The injured were abandoned. Resources were never wasted on those who could not contribute. This was not cruelty. It was simply efficient. It was how things were done. But these humans did not seem to care about efficiency. The woman named Yuna spent hours treating him. She frowned at his wounds and tried different medicines. Many of them did not work. Some of them made things worse. But she did not give up. She kept trying until she found something that helped. When Ven asked her why, she looked at him like he had asked why the sky was blue. Because you are my patient, she said. I do not stop until my patient is better. The old man named Juan brought him soup and sat beside him in the evenings. He told stories about his life, about wars he had fought and friends he had lost. Ven understood only parts of the words, but he understood the feeling behind them. This man had seen death many times. He knew how precious life was. Every creature deserves a chance, Juan said one night. I do not care where you came from. While you are here, you are one of us. And then there was the girl. Su-Min came every day after her lessons. She brought paper and showed Ven how to fold it into shapes. Birds, flowers. She talked to him constantly about everything and nothing. She told him about her parents who had died. She told him about her dreams of seeing the ocean from the sky. She told him about the stars she watched every night before sleep. Do you live up there? She asked once, pointing at the ceiling as if it were the sky. Ven nodded slowly. Yes, very far away. Is it beautiful? Ven thought about the cold ships and empty stations of the collective. He thought about the endless darkness between worlds. No, he said. It is not beautiful. Su-Min smiled at him. Then you should stay here. We have the ocean, and the trees, and the birds. It is very beautiful. Ven did not know what to say. After 2 weeks, he could walk again. The villagers learned of his presence. There was no way to keep such a secret in a place so small. Fear spread like fire. Some people wanted to call the government. Others wanted to force Ven to leave. A few even talked about killing him. There was a meeting in the village hall. Everyone came. Ven was not allowed inside, but Teho told him what happened afterward. They were scared, Teho said. They do not understand what you are. They think you might hurt them. I was sent to hurt them, Ven said quietly. Your people should be scared. Teho looked at him for a long moment. But you have not hurt anyone. You have done nothing wrong. That does not matter. I am dangerous just by being here. Maybe, Teho said. But I stood up for you. I told them that we do not abandon those who need help. I told them that if we turn you away, we lose something important about who we are. What did they decide? Teho smiled, tired but proud. You can stay. Not everyone agreed, but most did. Ven could not understand it. He had seen humanity from above. He had watched them destroy each other over small differences. He had recorded their wars and their cruelty. But these same creatures now chose to protect an alien who had come to study them for destruction. The weeks became months. Ven grew stronger. He helped Teho with the fishing, learning to cast nets and pull ropes. He helped Yuna carry supplies to the clinic. He helped Juan repair the roof of the village hall. He watched everything with new eyes. He saw Taiho wake before sunrise every morning, not because he had to, but because his village depended on him. He saw Yuna treat an old woman who could not pay, accepting a basket of vegetables as thanks. He saw Juan teach children how to tie knots and tell stories, passing down knowledge that money could not buy. And he saw Su Min grow brighter every day. She had lost everything, but she still laughed. She still dreamed. She still looked at the stars with wonder instead of fear. One evening, Ven sat on the beach with Su Min. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of orange and gold. The waves whispered against the sand like a song without words. "Why do you keep being kind to me?" Ven asked. "You know what I am. You know where I came from." Su Min thought about this. She was young, but she was not foolish. She understood more than most adults gave her credit for. "When my parents died," she said slowly, "everyone told me to be strong. They said crying was weak, but Yuna let me cry. She held me and said it was okay to be sad. She said being strong does not mean hiding your feelings. It means feeling them and still getting up the next day." She looked at Ven with those bright, curious eyes. "You look sad sometimes, like you are lost. I do not want you to feel lost alone. Nobody should feel lost alone." Something broke inside Ven, something that had been frozen for his entire existence. He felt a strange warmth spread through his chest, and he realized with shock that his eyes were wet. He was crying. Kalari did not cry. Kalari did not feel. But Ven was no longer sure what he was. That night, he sat in Taiho's house and wrote. Not a report for the collective. They believed he was dead. They had already moved on to other worlds and other missions. He wrote for himself. He wrote everything he had learned. Humans are not efficient. They waste time on things that bring no profit. They sing songs and tell stories and make art that serves no purpose. They care for the sick even when there is no hope. They love people who are not their blood. They fight for strangers they have never met, and somehow, this is their strength. They are fragile. They live short lives and their bodies break easily. But inside that fragile shell, there is something the collective never had. Something that cannot be measured or calculated. They call it hope. They call it love. They call it family. I do not have words for what it really is. I only know that I have felt it, and I do not want to go back to what I was before. Ven put down his pen and looked out the window. At the dark sea dot, he did not know what the future held. He did not know if he could ever truly belong here. But for the first time in his existence, he wanted to try. He wanted to be alive, not as a Kalari, not as an observer, but as something new. Something that these impossible, beautiful creatures had taught him to become. The message came at midnight. Ven was sleeping in the small room Taiho had built for him when a sound woke him. A high, thin noise that cut through the silence like a knife. He knew that sound. He had heard it 1,000 times in his old life. His emergency beacon. Damaged in the crash, but not destroyed. It had finally reached the collective dot. He climbed out of bed and walked to the shore, where the wreckage of his ship still lay half buried in the rocks. The beacon pulsed with cold blue light. A voice came from the damaged speakers, broken but clear enough to understand. Observer Ven, your distress signal has been received. A recovery vessel is en route to your location. Estimated arrival, 12 rotations. Prepare for extraction. Your survival ensures the mission continues. The preliminary assessment of Earth will proceed as planned. The voice stopped. The blue light faded. Ven stood in the darkness, feeling the cold wind on his skin. 12 days. The collective was coming. Not to save him. Not really. They were coming because he was useful. Because he had spent months living among the humans. Because his knowledge would make the extraction easier. They would take him back. They would pull every memory from his mind. They would learn about the village, about the coast, about the people who had saved his life. And then they would begin the process of taking Earth apart. Taeho, Yuna, Juan, Su-Min. All of them would die. Everything they had built, everything they had taught him, everything they loved, gone. Dust scattered across an empty world. Ven fell to his knees on the cold sand. For the first time in his life, he felt true despair. Not the cold acceptance of the Kaleri. Real despair. The kind that humans felt when they faced impossible choices. He could run. He could leave the village and disappear into the wilderness. But it would not matter. The collective would still come. They would still find Earth. The only difference would be that Ven would not be there to see it end. Or he could go back. He could stand on the shore and wait for the ship. He could return to the collective and pretend that these months had meant nothing. He could become the cold observer again and watch another world die. The thought made him sick. There was a third choice. The hardest choice. He could fight. The next morning, Ven called a meeting. He gathered Taeho, Yuna, Juan, and the village elders in the small community hall. Su-Min was not supposed to come, but she snuck in and sat in the corner, watching with wide eyes. Ven told them everything. He told them what he was. A Kaleri observer. A watcher sent to judge their world. He told them about the collective, about the ships that harvested planets and the species that had vanished because of them. He told them about his original report, the words he had written recommending Earth for extraction. I was going to help destroy you, he said, his voice steady but filled with shame. I looked down at your world and saw only weakness. I did not understand what you really were. The room was silent. He could see the shock on their faces, the anger, the fear. He had expected this. He deserved this. But now they are coming, Ven continued. In 12 days, a recovery ship will arrive. They will take me. They will take everything I know. And then they will begin the process of ending your world. An elderly woman spoke up, her voice sharp. Then we should give you to them. Maybe they will leave us alone. They will not, Ven said. The collective does not bargain. They do not negotiate. Once they decide to take a world, nothing stops them. Giving me to them will only make it easier. Then what do you expect us to do? Another man demanded. We are farmers and fishermen. We have no weapons. We cannot fight ships from the stars. I know, Ven said. I know how weak this sounds. But I also know their technology. I know how they think. I know their weaknesses. They have never faced real resistance. They do not expect it. If we can hurt them badly enough, they might hesitate. They might decide that Earth is more trouble than it is worth. Might, the elder woman said bitterly. You ask us to fight and die on a might. I ask you to fight and live, Ven said. I ask you to be what you have always been. The people who saved the dying stranger. The people who refused to give up. The people who taught me what it means to be alive. The room fell quiet again. Then Juan stood up. His old bones creaked, but his eyes were bright with fire. I was a soldier once, he said. I fought in a war that everyone said we would lose. We won because we refused to accept defeat. We won because we fought for our homes and our families. He looked around the room at the scared, uncertain faces. These creatures from the stars, they think we are weak because our lives are short. They think we are nothing because we do not have their ships and their weapons. But they do not understand what humans can do when we are protecting those we love. He turned to Ven and held out his hand. You made a mistake. You came here to help destroy us. But you changed. You learned. And now you want to fight beside us. That is enough for me. Taeho stood next. Then Yuna. One by one, the villagers rose to their feet. Not all of them, Some remained seated, too scared or too angry. The most stood dotted in the corner. Su Min stood too. Her small face was pale but determined. "We do not leave family behind," she said, repeating words she had heard from Tae-ho. "And Van is family now." The next 12 days were chaos. Ven drew diagrams of Kalari ships and explained their weaknesses. Their shields were powerful but could be disrupted by strong electromagnetic pulses. Their sensors were advanced but could be confused by heat and movement. Their soldiers were efficient but predictable. They followed orders exactly and did not adapt to surprise. Tae-ho organized the fishermen. They knew the coast better than anyone. They knew the caves and the hidden coves. They knew how to move quietly in the dark. Yuna turned the clinic into a medical station. She gathered supplies and trained volunteers in basic first aid. She knew that people would be hurt. She wanted to be ready. Juan dug into his past. He still had connections from his military days. He made phone calls and called in old favors. Weapons arrived in unmarked boxes. Not many, not enough. But something. The village transformed. Fear became purpose. Doubt became determination. These were not soldiers or heroes. They were ordinary people facing an impossible enemy. But they did not run. They did not hide. They prepared to fight. On the night before the collective arrived, Ven walked to the beach where it all began. The wreckage of his ship was barely visible now, half swallowed by sand and sea. Su-Min found him there, as she always did. "Are you scared?" she asked. Ven looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, a ship was crossing the darkness, bringing death to this small blue world. "Yes," he said honestly. "I am very scared." "Me too," Su-Min said. She sat down beside him and took his hand. Her small fingers felt warm against his cold skin. "But we are not alone," she said. "And that is what matters." Ven squeezed her hand gently. Tomorrow, the sky would bring enemies. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, under the quiet stars, he felt something he had never felt in all his long existence. He felt ready. The Kalari ship descended through the clouds like a knife cutting silk. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Smooth and dark, shaped like a blade pointed at the heart of the world. The villagers watched it come down, and even the bravest among them felt fear crawl up their spines. But they did not run. Ven stood at the front of the group, watching his people arrive. Not his people anymore, he reminded himself. He had made his choice. He had chosen Earth. He had chosen the fisherman who saved him and the doctor who healed him, and the old soldier who defended him, and the little girl who taught him how to fold paper cranes. The ship landed on the beach with a soft hiss. A door opened in its side, and figures emerged. Kalari soldiers. 10 of them. They moved with mechanical precision, their weapons raised, their faces empty of emotion. Behind them came a commander, taller than the others, older. His name was Dross, and Ven had known him in another life. They had trained together. They had served together. Dross had always been proud of his coldness. He considered emotions a disease. "Observer Ven," Dross said. His voice was flat. "You have survived. The collective is pleased. You will return with us now. Your knowledge of this world will be valuable." Ven did not move. "I am not going back." Dross tilted his head slightly. "This is not a request. You are Kalari property. You do not have choices." "I am not Kalari anymore," Ven said. "I belong here now. These people saved my life. I will not betray them." Dross was silent for a moment. Then something like amusement flickered across his face. It was gone as quickly as it appeared. "You have been corrupted by these creatures. Their emotions have infected your mind. This is unfortunate but not unexpected. Prolonged exposure to primitive species often causes this kind of damage. He raised his hand, and the soldiers pointed their weapons at the villagers. "We will take you by force. We will extract your memories, whether you cooperate or not. And then we will proceed with the harvesting of this world. The outcome is the same. Your resistance means nothing." "Maybe," Ven said, "but I learned something from these humans. Something you will never understand. And what is that? The outcome does not always matter. Sometimes the fight is the point." Ven gave the signal. From the hills above the beach, a flash of light exploded. The electromagnetic pulse that Tejo and the fishermen had built from salvaged parts and old generators hit the Kalari ship like a thunderbolt. Sparks flew. Systems screamed. The ship's shields flickered and died. Dross spun toward the ship in shock. In that moment of confusion, the villagers attacked. They came from every direction. From the caves along the shore. From the trees above the cliffs. From boats hidden in the fog. They were not soldiers. They were fishermen with harpoons, and farmers with axes, and elders with hunting rifles. Older than some of them were, they should have lost. The Kalari were faster, stronger, and better armed. But they had never faced anything like this. They had never fought people who did not care about winning. People who only cared about protecting their home. Tejo led the charge from the boats. He crashed into the Kalari line like a wave against rocks. A soldier shot him in the shoulder, but he did not stop. He kept swinging his fishing gaff until the soldier fell. Juan fired from the cliffs with the calm precision of a man who had spent his youth in war. Every shot found its target. He had not held a rifle in 30 years, but his hands remembered. Yuna moved through the chaos, pulling the wounded to safety. She had no weapon. She had only her hands and her determination. A soldier tried to grab her, and she drove a medical needle into his neck. He went down. And Sumin watched from the clinic, her heart pounding, her hands clutching a paper crane she had made for Ven. The battle was short but brutal. When it ended, 6 Kalari soldiers lay on the beach. 3 more had retreated to the ship. The villagers had won, but Dross still stood. He held a weapon that hummed with energy. His eyes were fixed on Ven with pure hatred. "You have betrayed everything we are," Dross said. "You have become one of them. A disease. A corruption. I will end you here, and then I will call for reinforcements. Your little victory means nothing. More ships will come. Thousands of them. And this world will burn." Ven knew he was right. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. Even if they won today, the collective would return. Earth could not fight forever, unless someone made them stop. "You are right," Ven said. "More ships will come. But will they come if they hear the truth? Will they come if they learn what we really are?" Dross laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. The truth? The collective does not care about truth. They care about resources, about expansion, about survival. "Maybe the collective does not care," Ven said. "But the people in the collective might. They might not all be as cold as you. They might still have some spark inside them that remembers what it means to feel." He walked past Dross toward the damaged ship. The commander raised his weapon, but Ven did not stop. "Kill me if you want. But I'm going to send a message first. A message to every Kalari ship, every station, every world. And they will hear the truth about humanity. They will hear what I learned here." Dross fired. Tejo threw himself in front of Ven. The shot hit him in the chest. He fell to the sand without a sound. "Tejo!" Yuna screamed. Ven caught him before he hit the ground. Blood soaked through his shirt. His eyes were glassy, but he was still breathing. "Go," Tejo whispered. "Send your message. We did not fight for nothing." Ven laid him gently on the sand. Una was already running toward them. Juan was already firing at Dross, forcing the commander back. Ven ran. He reached the ship and found the communication array. It was damaged but functional. His fingers moved across the controls with the speed of someone who had used them 1,000 times. He opened a channel. Not to the commanders. Not to the leaders. To everyone. Every ship. Every station. Every listening device in the Kaleri network. And he began to speak. I was sent to observe humanity. I was told they were primitive, violent, and insignificant. I was wrong. They are fragile, yes. Their lives are brief. Their bodies break easily. But within that fragility lies something our collective has never possessed. His voice carried across the stars. A child held my hand when I was dying. A fisherman saved me when he had every reason to let me drown. A doctor healed me knowing I was not her kind. An old man defended me as though I were his own son. Somewhere in the darkness of space, ships paused their courses to listen. Humanity is not insignificant. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they conquer, but because they connect. They make monsters into family. They turn enemies into friends. He thought of Su Min and her paper cranes. He thought of Taiho bleeding on the sand. He thought of everything these impossible creatures had taught him. Do not come to Earth, not because you will fail, but because if you succeed, you will destroy the only species in the universe that could have taught us how to live. He paused, feeling the weight of his next words. This is my final report. I am no longer Kaleri. I am home. He destroyed the array. The message was sent. Dross was gone when Ven came back outside. He had retreated to the ship with the surviving soldiers. The ship rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Maybe they would return. Maybe other ships would come. But maybe they would not. Maybe somewhere in the cold darkness of space, someone had heard his words and felt something stir inside them. Teho survived. Una worked through the night to save him. It was close. Too close. But he woke up the next morning with a weak smile and asked if they had won. We did, Ben said. The village healed slowly. They buried the dead with honor. They rebuilt what was broken. And they watched the sky every night, waiting to see if more ships would come. Weeks passed. Then months. The sky remained empty. On a quiet evening, Ven sat on the beach with Su Min. The sun was setting. The waves whispered against the shore. Everything felt peaceful in a way that still surprised him. Do you think they listened? Su Min asked. The others like you? Ven looked at her. This small, fierce, impossible creature who had first seen him not as a monster but as a friend. I think some of them did, he said. Maybe not all. Maybe not enough. But some. That is a start, Su Min said. She held out a paper crane she had been folding. This one is for you. To remember today. Ven took it carefully. It was delicate and imperfect and beautiful. Thank you, he said. They sat together and watched the stars come out. Somewhere out there, the collective still existed. Somewhere out there, decisions were being made about Earth's future. But here, on this small beach, in this small village, none of that mattered. Here, there was only the sound of waves and the warmth of family and the simple truth that Ven had finally learned. Some things were worth fighting for. Some things were worth dying for. And some things, like love and hope and the stubborn refusal to give up, could change the universe one small heart at a time. He was no longer a watcher. He was home.